welcome to the Student Ministry Conversations podcast with your hosts, Brent Aiken, David Pruitt, and Russell Martin. This podcast is all about equipping, encouraging, and inspiring youth pastors weekly with topics that are brought to the table by youth pastors from all over the world. And now, here's your host for this week, Brent Aiken. Hey, and welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time listening to us, we want to welcome you and invite you over to our website, studentministryconversations.org, where you can find all of our previous episodes, our show notes, and blog articles. Our goal is that you are inspired, encouraged, and the things that you hear on this podcast can equip you to be a better student pastor for the church that you're serving in. So I don't have a guest today. Congratulations. Hopefully, by the time you're listening to this, most of you have started school. And so the fall has begun and we are kicking off with all of our different activities. And so with that, I wanted to come and just do a personal conversation and something that I have genuinely tried to work on in my ministry. And hopefully it is a bit of encouragement and a challenge for you to do the same in yours. Or if you do this already, maybe it's just a moment of introspection to where you can be the person and the ministry that you want to be as you go forward this fall. And so the first thing the topic for today that I wanted to talk about was building volunteers. And so as most of you know by now, volunteers are the heart and the soul of what we do. Most of us run a lot of different volunteers with a lot of different roles and responsibilities throughout their ministry settings, whether you meet on Wednesday nights or Sunday nights, or whether you have volunteers that go on trips or go to camp with you. A lot of things happen with volunteers, and it is up to us in order for us to be the ones that are not only building a group of volunteers, but we're also supposed to be building them up, encouraging them, and also giving them opportunities to grow and develop as leaders in and of themselves. And so hopefully there's one thing I can share with you that saves you a lot of time and stress and frustration. If you haven't listened or if you haven't heard this before, is you cannot do ministry on your own and expect to be in it for the long run. If you're wanting to spend a career in student ministry, you have to find, encourage, and equip adults that are passionate about teenagers to help you out in your ministry. There are many ways and methods to go through this, but the way that I have found to be the most effective for volunteers is this, and that's start with your parents. Parents can be your biggest allies, or they can also be your biggest adversaries, depending on how your effort and how your communication goes towards them. I have found multiple ways to make this happen. And one of the greatest ways in my mind to kill two birds with one stone is to find parents that are invested in their kids' lives and the lives of their friends and invested in their faith journeys and plug them in to start changing lives in your ministry. And now this might be one of those things where you're like, wait, well, most of the involved invested parents in my church already do other things. Maybe they're already leading small groups, or maybe they're already doing other things. You probably still have volunteers or adults in your church that are not volunteering and doing things. And so the first thing you have to do is just get to know your parents. Hopefully, if you've been in your ministry for a while, you know them. If you haven't, that should be a priority, is to get to know all the different families of students that you have. And so that can be a very, very impactful thing that you do when it comes to your ministry. And so inviting parents into the faith journey and challenging and encouraging other students to live up in their faith as well can be done in a lot of different ways. But primarily we do this to be, easy enough. We invite them to be small group leaders within our program. If you're working on building a small group ministry or a small group program, then begin to just invite them to come and sit with you as you teach. Encourage them to use their voice and share their wisdom when appropriate, but also encourage them it's okay not to share if they don't feel like they have anything. Continue and begin to develop them as a leader. Work on their ability to pray in the group. Parents don't like praying out loud just as much as kids don't. Also work on their ability to answer questions and feel confident that they have the knowledge to do so, and teach them to be okay when they don't have the answers. This is also a pretty tremendous life lesson for students as well. And so with that though, I wanted to kind of just talk about this for a second with speaking life and encouraging students. Um, People are prone to believe that they can't do something until they're taught how to do it. And this makes me think of a particular leader in one of my past ministries, and his name was Kenny. Now, Kenny was one of the first leaders that I had join me in this particular ministry. And I vividly remember him telling me one Wednesday night that he was here because he wanted to be there. And just FYI, that's something you're looking for. But he also told me, and I remember this, like I said, he said that he would never be the leader of the group because that's just not something he thinks he would ever be comfortable in. So, as we started off, Kenny was the best volunteer. He would help when we needed help. He would go on trips. He would do anything that he could for me when I needed help at the drop of a hat. But I could tell that he had the ability to be a great small group leader. And it became my goal to get him there by encouraging him and speaking life into him. As our ministry began, we picked up a few more leaders, including my wife for a season, and I placed my wife with him as the co leader while I took another group that needed a teacher. We began a system of challenging our leaders to take steps in their faith, as well as challenging the kids to take steps in theirs as well. And the challenge for the co leaders was for them to teach 2 or 3 lessons out of the semester that roughly consisted of 12 to 14 weeks. So Kenny was hesitant to say the least. But he was willing to help and he stepped up to the plate. Long story short, after that semester, he found out that he could definitely be the leader of the group, and it only grew the investment that he had for students. For the next 2 years, he led one of our 7th and 8th grade groups, and I placed another leader that was in the same spot as Kenny was a few years back, and I allowed him to begin to encourage and equip her to lead as well. It was really a beautiful cycle that I got to kind of watch play out. When I announced I was leaving the church to move closer to home, I was beyond confident that the ministry could thrive without me. And I left it in the hands of 2 of the most capable volunteers I had in that church, one of them being Kenny. They continued to lead the ministry week to week for the next 6 months after I left until they found their new youth pastor to come in and step up. They were absolutely amazing. They did great, and to this day, I'm still looking for my next Kenny when it comes to leaders. I don't say this last part to say that it takes a long time to happen, but I do believe that it takes time to find the right parents and working on them and encouraging them to lead and lead well. Find the parents that are invested and begin with them. But how do you get more parents or adults involved? You can go out on a manhunt searching for the best leaders to implement in your ministry. But something that I have found that works best when it comes to recruiting new volunteers is to love on and encourage the ones that you already have. Let them be your public relations team. The other leader that I left the ministry with was her name is Stephanie. She was actually a guest on one of my podcast episodes a while back, and I'll tag her episode in the show notes if you want to go back and listen to that one. But she was a dynamic mom that had an unrivaled passion for her kids and shared that passion for her love for Jesus too. We became really, really close friends during our time there, but she single-handedly brought in 8 of our 10 volunteers that were small group leaders by the time that I left my church. She loved her time working with students and was quick to tell and encourage others that they should be a part as well. I don't think I've ever had a more dynamic advertiser of any ministry that I've been a part of than Stephanie. But the lesson to learn is that people are telling others the people that tell others why something is so significant to them is by far and large the most contagious way to get others to join in. Robert Kiyosaki, the founder of Rich Dad Poor Dad, is quoted saying, "True passion attracts." If you have passion in your business, the right people will be attracted to your team. Find your passionate leaders and encourage them to share their feelings about what they do within the group. Do not just tell them to go get more people to volunteer. Recruitment and passion are 2 very different conversations. When people are interested and are wanting to come and see what's happening, then you step in to have the administrative conversations about the expectation of leaders, background checks, etc. But let the leader share their passion and why they love it so much in the first place. But my conversation doesn't stop here. I also strongly believe that in order to be a great leader, you are a good leader on both ends of the volunteer spectrum. Prepare them to be great leaders while they are in your program, but you're also paving the way for them to be great leaders as they leave the program too. Recently, I just finished the series Ted Lasso with my wife. And there was a quote that revolutionized the way that I kind of saw how I encompass and look at this. And it's a kind of revolutionized the way that I see leadership. And it said, "A good leader hopes that you will move on. A great leader knows you will." A good leader hopes that you will move on. A great leader knows that you will. So, how are you allowing opportunities for your leaders to gracefully bow out in their trying seasons of life? Are you making opportunities to open the door to leave for them instead of making them awkwardly walk into that conversation being afraid of how you'll react? Do you feel like do you think that they feel like they will let you down? Be a leader that's actively pursuing your volunteers and make sure that they're healthy while they are involved in your program. That is one of the most important things I've learned. And quite honestly, through my going through and trying to figure out what leadership and how I can equip leaders and do everything else, that is one of the tried and true things that comes back to every single time. Don't be afraid to find someone that's just willing to be there, but encourage them and teach them to be the leader that you see in them. Secondly, allow your passionate leaders to be your best PR. Allow your passionate leaders to walk out and say, "Hey, like, man, hands down, the favorite part of my week is Wednesday night when I get to go up and I get to sit with a bunch of sixth grade kids or seventh and eighth grade kids or high school kids. And we just get to talk about life in Jesus. I don't feel qualified at all to be the one leading them, but I love it. I get more out of it than they do." That is the kind of conversations that are going to bring people in. And the more that you allow them to speak on their passions, the more that you have opportunities for them to bring people in, get people involved and excited. And all else fails, if they are just going out and sharing their passions with other parents or other people in the church, then at the end of the day, even if they don't come and volunteer, you're getting some tremendous um, conversations about your ministry and about how you're leading and how the students are taking and being receptive of the small group materials and all those different conversations. You have a parent bragging to other parents about how ministry is going. And that is one of the biggest wins ever because, like I said, your parents are either your biggest partners or your biggest adversaries. And it depends on how much and how well you communicate with them. And then finally, like I said, allow them grace to leave, but prepare them to leave. They are not going to be a volunteer forever. Be okay with that. They're not going to be probably the same amount of a leader when they walk in the door as when they leave the door. And that should be a responsibility of yours. Make sure you spend time encouraging, loving on, spending life with your leaders because they are the ones that are ultimately doing the conversations and the life change and answering all the students' questions in the small groups that you are putting on week to week. So allow them to share life with the students, but you have to make sure that they have someone to share life with as well. So, with that being said, I hope that this finds you at the beginning of school. I hope that this finds you in a place where you are thriving and you are pushing to do ministry well. But if it's not, just a reminder, we are here for you. We are here to listen to anything that you have going on. We are here to offer advice. We're here to provide solutions for situations, whatever you need, or also, like we say at the end of every episode, we would also just love to have you come on the podcast so you can share with us on the passions that you have, or maybe something's really, really stirring in your heart about ministry right now. We'd love to hear about it. So we would absolutely love for you to reach out to us on podcast at studentministryconversations.org, so you can get on the show with us, because we've said this a lot in a lot of different episodes. We don't have a show without you guys. The conversation has never been about us. Obviously, we are here to facilitate and we are here to have some part of the discussion, but the goal from the very beginning was we want to hear from you guys. We don't want to hear ourselves talk on a regular basis. So with that being said, we love you. We thank you for what you're doing, even when you might feel like you're not being thanked at all. And we just pray and pray and pray that you are encouraged and inspired. And this message challenges you in one aspect of your ministry to where you can push a little better and a little harder towards building a volunteer program in your ministry that is going to make life-changing conversations with students in your ministry as well. With that being said, that's all we have for this week. If you would like to be on the podcast, like I said, please come, please share. Podcast at Student Ministries Conversation. Podcast at studentministryconversations.org. Also, we'd love for you to share our podcast. One of the cool things about it is we don't pay advertising. We don't do anything with that. And so you sharing the podcast and getting it out is our only form of advertisement. And so our word of mouth advertisement has pushed us to over 10,000 downloads, which is fantastic. Something that we dreamed of when we started, and it's all because of you guys. So thank you with that. And then also be on the lookout for a few things coming up in the next couple months. One of the things that we are going to start doing is we are going to start trying to do, we haven't come up with a name for it, but basically we're going to call it something to the nature of ministry conversations or ministry cohorts or something to that nature, to where I'm going to start leading a group, to where we meet once a week and we get to just talk about ministry and what's going on in your ministries and how we can be better together as a team of youth pastors working alongside you and encouraging you to be a part of that. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, man, I want to be a part of that, go ahead and shoot me an email, Brent at studentministryconversations.org, and tell me that you would like to be a part of that cohort. And if you don't, we'll also have a sign up going on our social media here in the next few weeks. But we are looking forward to starting that. I'm excited to get that going. Online communication with other youth pastors has been a huge part of my ministry, and it's gotten me through some of the darkest moments of my ministry career, because I realized that I wasn't alone. And so that's our goal. That's our hope, is that you realize you're not alone. You're not the only one doing this. And we are here to support you in every step of the way. So with that being said, I will catch you guys next week. I hope you have a great start to your fall, if you haven't started already, and hopefully you got all of your students out to schools and the school year has started well. But make sure that you lead well in and out of the school district, in and out of the youth room, with your leaders, with your students, with your family, because that is our ultimate goal when it comes to this. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you next week.